Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a sponsored video from Juegorama. This is a brand new game coming to Kickstarter. It's called The Path of the Adventurers, which is a light dice chucking game that takes the Descent model and distills it down into a very simple game.
Yeah, this is definitely thematically similar to those types of games. It's obviously a high fantasy game, but like Jeremy said, this is kind of more towards the beer and pretzels sort of approach. It's a very light experience you can get into and experience very quickly.
Each of the players is going to represent one of the archetypes in role-playing. I have the barbarian in front of me, you have an elf. Each of these has cards that are going to be associated with them that are skills and weapons, and you're going to have a number of different attributes. Everyone has the three basic attributes of strength, intelligence, and dexterity. These are tied into the skills that you can use, but also the dice that you're going to be rolling during game.
Yeah, and as we always say, this is a prototype here. There's a lot of certainly prototype components, but we also have all of these miniatures. There's miniatures that represent our characters. There's miniatures for all the different creatures and monsters we're going to be fighting. And then there's some mini bosses and the Overlord, of course. We've also got some item cards up here that we're going to be able to get during the market phase. There's a few different phases of the game, just four that breaks down very simply, and it's all going to start in the village.
Yes, so the object of this game is to defeat one of the two different Dark Lords, and in order to do so, you're going to have to defeat a lot of the common enemies, find one of the mini bosses, and then go on to the Dark Lord himself. All the action is going to take place right here in the village and the surrounding locations that you're going to be discovering. The trick in this game is that each of these locations represents one of those tiers that you have to go through. For instance, here we have a forest. The first time that you see any one of the forests in the game, you're just going to be battling common monsters. But the next forest that you see, you're going to be battling common monsters along with one of the mini bosses. And the final forest that you find is going to have those common monsters, but this time one of the Dark Lords.
Yeah, and it's not just the forest that works that way. All of the different locations have 3 cards in this stack, and then we're going to be exploring through this as we explore away from the village. They can come up very quickly, or they can come out a little later. The interesting thing is, like Jeremy said, they level up, so you can't really go to the next forest really early because that mini boss is going to be pretty tough. You're going to want to go back to the village and go through the market phase, get some experience, get more skills, those sorts of things, because you're going to want to grind a little bit at the beginning of this to level up.
Now, each of the rounds is going to be broken down into 4 phases. The very first thing that's going to happen at the start of each of the rounds is the players are going to reveal one of these event cards.
Yeah, this is called the event phase, and you're going to reveal one of these cards, and it's going to have some sort of impact or effect on that round. For instance, this one says, place an additional goblin in every location with enemies. So all of these cards are going to do a variety of different things. It's basically something that the characters have to deal with right there and then.
Once the event phase is over, then you go into the travel phase. Now, the players are going to be moving as a singular group. The players are going to decide which one of the surrounding locations that they wish to travel to. Each of the locations can be moved in an orthogonal way. Now, there's 2 things that happen during this travel phase. It's either an exploration or it is an assault. Now, let's talk about exploration first. When you explore, you're simply going to say, we want to move to this location here. You're going to reveal one of the cards, and it's going to tell you the distribution of the common enemies in that location. Players have a decision to make at that point. They can retreat back to the village and simply say, we don't want to attack it, we're not built up to attack it at this time. That card's going to remain there, so players are going to know what's in that area. Or they can decide, hey, let's just go ahead and do battle in that location. The other thing they can do is they can just choose one of these locations and just decide to assault it. They're not going to be able to look at that card, but they do have the benefit of having a free combat round during the very first round of combat in that round.
Yeah, and that is the next phase. So depending on whether or not you explore and fight or just assault, you're going to go into the combat phase of the game. And this is really the meat and potatoes of this game.
Each of the players is going to have a number of attributes in front of them. These attributes are going to line up according to their skills. For instance, I have the barbarian in front of me. He has 4 strength, he has 1 intelligence, and he has 2 dexterity. Each of the players is also going to start with 1 weapon, along with 2 skill cards. Now, you're going to get more of these skill cards to the game by defeating an entire location.
Yeah, and these locations are the other interesting thing about combat, because when you enter them, you may not see on this card here, but there are lanes. And as we have right here down below, if we were to enter this location, we're going to arrange our characters within these lanes. These have a significant impact on who you can fight, who's in the front line, who's in the back line, it has a massive impact on ranged versus melee combat.
But before you get into combat, you have to check for initiative in that combat. Now, all of the enemies in the game have pre-printed initiatives on their actual card. However, the heroes are going to roll according to their speed. They're going to roll blue dice. Now, they're looking for very specific faces. Each of those faces is going to tell them which order they're going to attack in that round.
Yeah, after everyone rolls and you look at the monster's values, you're going to sort all of the characters and the creatures on this initiative track right here.
Combat will take place from 1 through 5, and right now we have the elf in first place, meaning that they're going to be able to use their attribute markers as they so fit. Now, what you want to attempt to do in this game is use particular combinations of attributes that are trying to line up with the weapons that you have as well as the skills that you have. For instance, I have this sword in front of me that requires 2 sword icons in order to do 2 damage. So I'm going to look at my attributes, see what kind of faces those dice may have, and roll as many as I want per action that I can take. You can take as many actions as you want, but you're only limited by the number of attributes that you have in that pool.
Yeah, and you also have skills that you can use. Now, these are a little bit different because they're going to be more powerful, but there's a little bit more of a downside too. As you can see the skill here, if this hits, it's going to do 100% damage to an enemy, thereby taking it right off of the board instead of just doing a little bit of damage. However, it's going to have a variety of different costs here, just like it is with the weapon. And at the bottom, you're going to see a fatigue factor. You're going to have to take some tokens that represent fatigue when you do one of these attacks, among some other things in the game. This is going to have an impact on how many of those tokens you can take back at the end of the round, thereby decreasing potentially the dice that you'll be able to roll the next time.
And there's 2 types of combat that you have to consider in this game. There's melee combat, and then there's ranged combat. Melee combat requires you to be adjacent to that other enemy that you're fighting, while ranged can shoot anywhere on the board. Each of the characters is going to take their turn, with the heroes rolling dice and the monsters also rolling dice according to the stats on their cards themselves. At the end of each of the combat rounds, the players have a choice to retreat back to the village or to continue doing combat. Now, you will get some of those attribute markers, which is always 7. However, you're only going to lose 2 of those fatigue. So as the battle moves on, you're going to be more fatigued and have less options with the skills that you have remaining.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance that you want to strike when you're using these skills and abilities that you have, because sometimes you might want to use them, but if you use all of them, you're going to have a lot of fatigue and you're going to have a very sort of slow going round the next one. So you might want to save up, do a little bit this round, thereby getting more of the tokens back for the next fight.
Now, what happens at the end of combat? If you are able to destroy all of the creatures or monsters in that location, there's a couple things that you have to do at the end of the round. Number 1, each of these locations is going to have 2 icons. These are basically celestial sets that you can collect. Now, when this happens, you're going to pick one of these 2 sets and draw one of the 3 cards from that particular deck. These are really, really powerful weapons and gears and shields. When you collect this, it can be given to any one of the players to use. You're also going to collect some money from the creatures that you destroy. This can be used in the town from a market where the players are going to use that money and spend it in order to get better and better gear. Again, this is kind of a communal pool where each of the players is sharing that money. So there may be a round where someone upgrades and the next player on their left or right may upgrade in the following round.
Yeah, that is the market phase, and it's a vital part of this game because you definitely need to go back, equip yourself better and better so that you can go out, fight not only the normal fights like you just fought, but that next level with the mini bosses, and then yet the level after that with the Dark Lord.
So remember, there are 3 ways that this game can end. Number 1, if you're able to defeat the Dark Lord, you're going to win the game. However, there's 2 other in-game conditions that are bad for you. If your entire party is killed, you lose the game. Also, if any of the monsters make their way into the village, which is done with several of the different event cards in the game, you are also going to lose the game.
So yeah, that is the path of the adventure, is a light 45 to 60-minute adventure game.
If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else we do. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.